Welcome to Back to the Podcast. And we're going to say welcome to Jurassic Park Safety Meeting.
Yeah. Safety meeting today. Safety meeting. All right, all employees are counted, except for Jed. Jed is still in the infirmary. Arm got bitten off by a Spinosaur.
We're still missing somebody here. I don't know where Hank's at.
Hank? Somebody check the cameras. Anybody see Hank?
Nedry, can you just please look into where Hank is at? Oh boy, I forgot all about Frank last week.
Oh, yeah,
man.
Unfortunately, that Dino didn't. I hear he tasted pretty good.
Yes. Look, get people. Bring it in. Enough talking now. Here's the thing. When it says carnivore on the sign, do not try to feed it with your hands, because Frank just about lost both of them in the process.
Actually, technically, he lost 9/10 of them. He still has a thumb working though, so that's okay.
Now, when we had our 5Y about the incident, we asked him, what were you doing?
This was, of course, in between the bouts of screaming. He was in mind-blowing pain at the time.
We needed to know now so we could have a corrective action on the issue. He was eating a ham sandwich.
Yes, it was definitely ham. It was ham, a slice of pickle, there was some onion, and I believe some horseradish on that.
Yeah, and for whatever reason, he thought he would give this nice velociraptor, who is in a cage for medical reasons, a sandwich.
This all turns out very badly, I'm afraid.
Yeah, poor Frank sticks his hands in there and chomp. I mean, it was pretty brutal. And I would really ask you guys to use common sense before feeding the dinosaurs in a manner like that.
Common sense, uncommon sense, whatever sense. Just don't stick your hand in by the velociraptors, please. Thank you.
Or any carnivore for that matter. It's going to happen again next week. I don't know what it is with you people, but every time somebody is doing something where they're either getting to be fully eaten by a dinosaur or partially eaten by a dinosaur, and this needs to stop now.
To be fair, we have talked to the geneticists about possibly making the carnivores less pretty so that people would stop trying to pet them. That seems to be a downfall in our strategies, unfortunately.
Maybe we should just stuck the feathers on them like they're scientifically proven to be.
Yeah, well, some people, like the idea of the feathers. Some people just don't. They just like the scales.
Now, as for Hank, who isn't here, electric fences, guys, 10,000 volts. That's a lot of electricity.
Oh, you don't want to whiz on those. No, sir.
For whatever reason, the bathroom was not in his reach. And when you gotta go, you gotta go. And, well, unfortunately, he didn't realize that where he went was pretty much on the electric fence.
Oh, yes. He went all right, and then he went and screamed and fell over and was on fire.
So he's recovering from his burns, 3rd-degree burns in areas that probably
don't need to be mentioned officially. We did get together a nice fruit basket for him, though, and I hear that the skin grafts are taking nicely. We are also going to be taking up a card if anybody wants to sign it for Hank.
Again, we're just going to stress that you cannot touch or go near the electric fences. Those voltage are to keep the dinosaurs out, and the dinosaurs are big.
Technically, boss, it's to put the dinosaurs in and to keep us out, but it's a fine point.
So electric fences, just be cautious. Look at the signs. We got them labeled all over the place.
Which brings us to an important point. We are gearing up for next week's big event, the Emergency Containment Failure Drill. We have a fancy, neat little acronym for it now. It is the ECFD. Oh, ECFD. Yeah, I always get those confused. Yes,
ECFD.
Yes, next week we are having a mandatory all hands on deck with the ECFD. And what we got is we've got Bob, one of those inflatable dinosaur suits. He's going to be going around, and if he catches anybody, you have failed, and you're going to have to go in for the 2-week training course again on mandatory safety involving containment failure.
Great. I think this is our first training like this for the ECFD. I'm actually looking forward to see how this all pans out.
Well, that's ever since corporate gave us the new signage. You see, we've got the nice sign up now. If everybody's seen the sign, number of days since last incident. An incident, you can read into that a lot if you like. Mm-hmm. But right now, it's standing there proudly at 1. Because of the Frank incident, and we're going to move forward from there. We're going to try to get that number up as high as we can, you see, or I'm not the OSHA monitor.
With that said, we're going to bring a little reminder here about dino fecal matter.
Oh, yeah, the dino's got a poo too, you know.
Now, everyone should know you should be wearing the proper contaminant suit and masks when handling this stuff.
Well, yes, you need the total personal protective gear, or PPG we're calling it. It's a very catchy acronym. And that includes gloves. No matter how much you want to play, boys, it's got to have gloves on, goggles, face mask, apron, and full containment suit.
Yes. And I mean, we're still looking for Harvey, who may have fallen into a big batch of it, but it's okay. I think we'll find him before we ever get to the resale for farming purposes. Boy, I tell you though, that dino poop certainly does make pretty good fertilizer.
Well, you know, there's the international community that's still very curious whether or not dinosaurs may have exotic ailments or diseases within their fecal matter. So once we get that all straightened out and, you know, learn to steam it and sanitize it and everything, it could be a very lucrative side branch for our operation. Don't let me lead you astray there. We're still we're still considering, you know, the profit margin a little bit here too.
And what's with this new dress code thing you're talking about? I don't quite understand this.
Well, the scientists have told us, you know, the geeks in the goggles. They say that the bright colors there, they tend to attract the ire of the carnivores and can increase their aggressiveness towards the wearers. So as a result, we have a new ruling where personal clothing is prohibited. You have to wear the dress code, which clearly has the company logo on it in reflective colors until that proves to be a problem. But otherwise, it is subtle, natural tones that will not incite the carnivores. Also, they have a pleasant, neutral scent, which will also hopefully not lead the carnivores to you in the event that you should be hiding from them.
There you go. Kind of looking at it now. I'm wearing my Jurassic Park shirt here, and it's pretty red in the middle of my chest.
Oh, yes. They say that's going to save on the costs of laundering to try to hide bloodstains.
All right. So, new dress code, people. Just keep that in mind. That's coming up. There'll be more information through the mail.
Yep. The dungarees and the one-piece suits will all be handed out. For those who have, dietary issues, they will be having the union suit with the butt flap, too.
Now, I know we spent a lot of time talking about these horrific things at our wonderful park here, but let me remind everybody here that, you know, you work for us, you work for Jurassic Park, and we have, you know, paid room and board. I mean, you guys, you haven't made. You get to come in from a ferry every day, leave a ferry, go to your hotel, your little house that you live on.
Yeah, you could almost say that we have more ferries than Disney's Magic Kingdom, eh?
More ferry rides, that's for sure. But it's a good place to work, guys. I mean, how many other companies can you work for that will pay your room and board? And so you're getting paid to work here, and then we're also paying for you to live here. I mean, that's great.
Yeah, how many places are you going to get to work with dinosaurs and get more pay than what you're getting here? Oh, yes, others may call it minimum wage, but still, you're getting to play with dinosaurs, and that more than makes up for it, I would say.
Minimum wage that's not restricted by the U.S. government laws.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yes. Minimum wage, I believe, in Tibet.
So just remember, people, I mean, this is a great place to work. And, you know, I don't know about you, but I am definitely looking forward to, you know, the unveiling of our super dinosaur. It's supposed to be like 20 times bigger than a T-Rex. And it's supposed to be able to swallow a T-Rex whole. I am so excited. This thing is going to be amazing. And I hope you're all able to come and see the unveiling of this mega dinosaur that our scientists have not yet named yet, but it'll be a beauty.
I have also been reassured by the geneticists and the scientists that, the standard 10,000 volts fence will be more than sufficient for containing said dinosaur, as it is vastly considered overkill for even our Tyrannosaurus rexes.
Yes. So, anyways, until next time we have our meeting, guys, be safe.
Oh, yes, be safe, everybody.
If it looks playful, just make sure you're not, it's probably going to eat you. So
if it looks playful, it may just be mating season, so stay away.
That too. So everybody get to work. You know when your lunches are, and I know when your lunches are too. And believe me, I will know when you guys aren't working. Well, Rob, that was fun, wasn't it? Going to Jurassic Park Safety Meeting.
Oh, that was fun. Glad I'm not there though.
Yeah. I don't think I would want to work there either. I mean, the free room and board might be nice, but I want to come home with my body parts.
Well, I don't know if I ever told you this, but when I was a kid, I really did want to be. I wanted to be an archaeologist before I ever saw Indiana Jones, because I thought the whole archaeologist thing was going out and finding dinosaur bones, and that fascinated me. I had so many plastic dinosaurs and things when I was a little kid, so that was one of my first loves. The idea of actually getting around real dinosaurs, now that I'm older and wiser, probably not as attractive, but I gotta admit, that would be a unique opportunity, but not for minimum wage.
Well, I don't know, maybe next time we'll dig deep into the world of Weyland-Yutani and their safety meetings and their probably other secret closed-door meetings about military weapon domination or whatever the heck that is they're into.
Yeah, I don't know. Why conquer the galaxy when you can own it and lease it out to people?
Yeah.
That's the smart way to conquer. You don't own the galaxy, you rent the galaxy.
So, Rob, let's talk about Ralph Bakši's Wizards.
Yeah, it's a movie, 1977. Ralph Bakshi had some success in animation and decided he wanted to make a kids movie his way.
Kids movie in quotations.
It is PG.
I'd still say kids movie in quotations.
There are some elements in it that made our eyebrows raise with the kids movie idea.
Well, after watching the movie, I mean, I think when we watched the documentary, Bakshi kept saying kids movie, kids fantasy film. I asked Rob, would you let your kids watch this movie?
Yeah, my 13-year-old would not like this movie. He'd be out of the room pretty quickly as soon as some of the more violent area, came out.
Right.
He probably would roll his eyes at the relative undress of some of the characters, or he'd be giggling at it. I'm not sure which.
Watching it awkwardly, uncomfortably with the father, not fun. The kids would giggle at it if they'd be watching it when we weren't watching it with them.
But we had a good time watching it together.
Yes,
because we both appreciated the things that this movie brought, and quite honestly, there's not a lot of people making movies like this.
No.
This was a concept fantasy movie.
It was very imaginative.
Very imaginative.
You talked about this a couple episodes ago in one of our random talk things, and you mentioned wizards, and I was fascinated by the concept of this movie. To the point where I wanted to borrow it to watch it, but then Rob, you're like, "Well, we just watch it together sometime," and that's what we did a couple days ago.
And that was well worth it, wasn't it?
Yeah. When I was a kid, a movie like this would be on television. I would have turned away because I would not have found it interesting at all. I was not into those fantasy style animated films. However, maybe if this one was on TV, given the visuals in the movie, particularly the fairy lady character, Eleanor. I might have been in shock of what I was seeing on the TV to the point that I might have actually watched the whole thing, or if not close to it.
But here's another thought too. You say if this would have come on TV when you were a kid, you probably wouldn't have watched it. Mm-hmm. Do you think that watching movies like Lord of the Rings may have opened your mind up to enjoying more fantasy elements?
I always say that Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, back in 2001, was like my version of Star Wars per se, because I grew up with Star Wars versus people like my parents or people older than me saying their Star Wars experience, they've never seen anything like that before. And I remember the advertisings for Lord of the Rings. I didn't think anything of it. Lord of the Rings, whatever. I'm not going to watch that. And of all people, my grandma asked me, I think Lord of the Rings must have been out for a week or two. She asked me if I was going to go see that new big movie, Lord of the Rings. I don't know. I didn't think anything of it. I said no, probably not. But I think if I recall correctly, I was probably feeling down and out, and I broke up with a girlfriend in that time frame, and I was off from work that night, and why don't I give this Lord of the Rings movie a shot, see what it's all about. I did, and that totally blew my mind away. I was just like, whoa, that was amazing. And I'm like, this is fantasy. So, and then I couldn't wait till the next year when part 2 came out, and then of course I had to wait for the third one after that. That got me reevaluating even the old Ralph Bakshi Lord of the Rings and the other 2 Hobbit films, Hobbit and Return of the King, that were animated. And then I became open-minded of fantasy films in general. And technically, some people don't like hearing this, but Star Wars would fall under fantasy more than it would really science fiction. I mean, it's both, but there's more fantasy elements to Star Wars. Wizard of Oz, it's a fantasy movie. I grew up watching that, so I think in some cases I was kind of in denial of fantasy films, because you think of fantasy films, I think of Legend or even
Conan,
and which I still have to watch one of those. I have not seen the older versions of Conan yet.
Oh my gosh! All right, well, the re-education of Dave is going to be continuing on apace.
But since then, you've brought over, we've watched Crawl together. We've watched Legend. Legend's a slow burn movie. It's a good movie, but you really got to get into it, and it's got nice world building in it. Just kind of like Wizard's got pretty good world building in that one too.
To wit, if you haven't seen Wizards, I think maybe we should just do a rundown of a synopsis of the story for the most part.
Yep.
We're not going to break this down scene by scene, even though I've got it in my notes. It's something that there's enough universal elements in, but it's primarily about things that just need talking and expanding on more so than, going through the whole story. So basically it's a story about 2 wizards, brothers, the good wizard, Avatar, who by the time this movie starts, I mean, this is 3,000 years after a nuclear apocalypse destroyed the Earth, and this is on Earth 3,000 years later. Magic has kind of come back now that humans aren't choking it off with technology. It's kind of Earth brings elves and dwarves and things back.
Yeah, I was under the impression that like the elves, the dwarves, whatever, they were kind of like when humans were destroying the Earth and the age that they're destroying it, that they kind of went out and kind of like hibernated per se, or just kind of went into hiding. And then when the humans destroyed themselves, and once the radiation cleared, they kind of slowly came out to reclaim the Earth. That's pretty much what I got out of it.
Yeah, to a large extent. And so we're kind of set up with Avatar, the good wizard, and we have Black Wolf, the evil twin. And strange thing, another one of the elements of this movie are good people who are mostly your elves and your fairies, versus the hideous mutants who are all deformed. We don't actually see any humans still.
No, they're all...
closest that you get is Avatar to being a human. Everyone else is either a fairy, an elf, or a mutant, robot, some sort of monster, or demon.
Right. Well, Avatar, wizard, really, but...
he looks humanish.
Humanish, yes, but the humans that are still around or alive, they kind of explain that the radiation and they're pretty much deformed, almost like Morlocks, like from like the Time Machine. That's almost what some of those drawings look like. But otherwise, the quote unquote humans are all masked yet, and they just cover themselves almost like Planet of the Apes, beneath Planet of the Apes.
Well, there's a couple of other analogs we can draw on, but to continue on with the story, Avatar and Black Wolf had a fight after their mother died. Black Wolf was happy that his mother died because he thought he'd take her spot, and Avatar was angry and ended up kicking him out. And Necron swore that, Black Wolf swore that he would have vengeance and eventually take over. So everything was at peace. It seems like the elves by themselves aren't prone to war. So everything was fine until Black Wolf got together all the mutants and everybody and started pushing them to fight, which they weren't really good at. We hear about them failing to really catch on. And as the story goes, eventually Black Wolf ends up finding old Earth technology, primarily footage and knowledge about the Blitzkrieg from World War II from the Nazis. And he uses the propaganda and technology to make his force an honest-to-goodness war force that the elves aren't really prepared to take on. So throughout the story, it's primarily about Avatar, who by this time is old and kind of unsure of himself, and his magic is a little suspect.
Yeah.
His student / love interest, in a way, Eleanor,
Yeah.
the queen of the primary city.
All white, see-through white, pretty much.
Yeah, there's not a lot that's left up to the imagination. Bakshi was not
the kids' movie, people.
Yeah, this was a kids' movie, but she's in underwear the whole time. This is one of the reasons why I would not show this to Alex. But she's the queen of her city of fairies. Then you have Peace, who was originally an assassin for Black Wolf and ended up taking out the president of the city, the father of Eleanor. But Avatar basically reprograms him, gets into his head, and convinces him to lead the group to try to make a stand against Black Wolf to stop the bloodshed. And then we have Weehawk, who is the prince of his own people, a tribe of elves. Elves are more tribal, probably nomadic. The fairies all seem to have their domains.
Yeah.
And elves and fairies have a rivalry. They don't get along great, but they aren't at war with each other. And so the story, basically, it's kind of a little bit of a Lord of the Rings scenario where the heroes are going off to try to stop the unspeakable army of darkness. And along the way, the army of Black Wolf, significant gains by his army playing under projection of Nazi propaganda and images of war, which freaks out the elves and makes them unable to fight back, and it encourages the mutants and demons that he's summoned to help fight. So they are winning at this point. So at the town of Montagar, again, where Eleanor is from, the group gets together to go to Scorch, which is in the Radiated Lands, to destroy the Dream Machine, which is a projector. Along the way, you see various signs that just drive forth that Black Wolf and his legions are evil. His minions seem kind of haphazard and sloppy. And what Dave was talking about, them wearing masks. If you've ever seen the cover, the images of Peace, but he's wearing a red jumpsuit with a World War II gas mask style face to it, which makes them look a bit more like the German stormtroopers with the chemical suits on to avoid mustard gas. That faceless, pitiless look of that technology of that era, and also the giant chicken that he rode on, adding the element of fantasy. Well, the giant ostrich.
Peace didn't really wear that mask though. It was those two other characters. I don't know what those other characters' names were. You had the bumbling idiot one, and then you had the other guy. They wore the mask.
That's true. Peace was basically a hood.
Peace looks amazing though. I mean I think I do remember seeing this cover like on DVDs and all that, like say at a media player, whatever store existed back in the old days. But it's simple. It's all red and eyes. Yep, it looks good. Sinister.
It reminded me a little bit of the guards of the Emperor in Star Wars.
Okay,
kind of that red iconic.
Before Star Wars too.
It just reminded me.
Yeah, before Star Wars.
Correct. So Peace, as he is renamed by Avatar after he's had his mind reconfigured to help them out, goes along, and you're kind of uncomfortable with the scenario because Weehawk will not forgive Peace for a long time. Eventually, they get to the domain of the mountain fairies, where we find out that
Mark Hamill voices one of the fairies.
Mark Hamill voices one of the fairies. A nice fellow.
Pre-Star Wars Mark Hamill, or in the same time frame, Hamill
doesn't voice him for long though.
No, it's like 5 seconds. Yeah, he's done.
He gets one speech, and then he gets So various bad things happen between Eleanor and the fairies. And then Avatar comes in and tries reasoning, and Weehawk realizes that Peace is gone, so he goes hunting him down, and everything gets kind of weird and trippy.
Well, I think this is where the budget was in.
Yes, this was made on a shoestring budget. We watched a special edition where Bakshi basically reveals how he kept having to borrow money to keep trying to get this next scene done and this scene done. So you could see some of the limitations were present throughout the movie.
Yeah. Strangely enough, there are times in the movie where the story might kind of just like get a little choppy somewhere. Like the part where Eleanor is taken by the fairies. It just seemed like it was...
Yeah, she's suddenly gone, and then the next thing you know, she's found up.
I would assume that maybe he planned on filming some of that transition scene, but instead it was like a cut. Now, ironically, I don't think he'd be able to get away with that today because audiences want information fed to them on how and why this is going on. Whereas this movie, so far, it really has a lot of detail to the story that you kind of get lost in what's going on in a good way, lost into the story because of
you can get sucked into it.
Yeah.
But another thing I like about it is that it does have this kind of brevity to the character list, so you don't have to memorize a huge cast, too. It's really about these characters and stays with them. So after the group is freed, and basically Avatar and Eleanor are banished out of the fairy realm for bringing problems, and Peace ends up saving Weehawk, so they become buddies. And when they meet up again, they are attacked by psychic projection from Blackhawk because Eleanor is nice to Peace, and Peace lets down some of his guard against Black Wolf, and Black Wolf then makes his attack. Then a tank comes out of nowhere, big old German tank. Peace tries shooting it and climbs up to take out the driver, and everybody else is like, run away. And Eleanor throws her sword and kills him. Dead. Kills Peace. And it's a plot twist that nobody sees coming. There's no indication that she's going to do this. She pulls out her sword, throws it, and takes him out. And then she jumped into the tank and ran away. And leaving Avatar kind of broken mentally for a while. Weehawk, of course, is angry and wants revenge, because Weehawk is always angry and wants revenge in this.
Grumpy little dude.
He's a very grumpy little dude, but considering the situation they're in,
killed in the beginning by Peace before he was Peace, and
the president of the fairies was killed by Peace.
And
then his friend too in the chase scene. Yeah,
was his friend killed by Peace, or was his friend killed by one of the other characters?
His friend was killed by Peace.
Okay, yeah.
When he was Necron 99.
That's right.
Before he got configured. So then they meet up with an elven armada that has stolen some of the weapons of war that the mutant army had, and so they were going to use them against their attackers. They get in this big armada and take off towards Scorch to attack at the homeland of the mutant army. Avatar is still broken. Eventually they get to the gates of Scorch. They get in, but Avatar kind of loses it and sets off the alarms. This is, of course, by this time, Peace is dead. Eleanor has been taken away by the mutants, so it is just Avatar and Weehawk by this time. They decide to split up in basically the throne room. Avatar sends Weehawk to go and find Eleanor and take care of her. Not in a good way. Certainly, that's what Weehawk's plans are. Avatar and Black Wolf meet face to face. Weehawk goes and he finds Eleanor, and he's about ready to finish her off when the wife, consort of Black Wolf, who is carrying his child, tells them, "No, stop! That's you can't just kill her." And she tells Weehawk that Black Wolf had taken over her mind and made her do it, which he believes her and forgives her. So they come back to find there's Avatar, Black Wolf. They exchange barbs. Avatar tells him, glad he changed his name, pulls out a gun and shoots him. So this epic clash between wizards
ends with a gunshot.
2 gunshots, if I remember right. I think he finishes him off with the second shot. But yes, this super powerful wizard gets taken out by a gun that he helped to unearth and recreate.
Because you're expecting wizard fights, like like wand clashing, whatever.
And it's pretty clear that Avatar can throw down magically. At one point, when he's with the mountain fairies, he is pulling off some major juju and changing the weather, and until the fairies cancel the spell. But he can do stuff. But nope, pulls out a gun, shoots his brother.
And it almost reminds me of that scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
A little bit.
It was just like, boom, like whoa. I wasn't expecting that. And I think that's part of the fun of this movie, was the usual things that go on in fantasy films. Those rules are kind of thrown out the window, and there's some twist to this that make this kind of unique.
This is one of those movies that the rules can pretty much be thrown out. This is, in a lot of ways, not like any movie that you expect. it follows similar patterns. You still have the quest, the forming of the group, the quest, the struggles, the inherent suspicion of people's motives. If you remember from Star Wars, is Han a traitor or not, and goes off. Be interesting to see those movies side by side and see if they have their breaks and their plots at about the same time. Bakshi and Lucas were contemporaries and communicated with each other. It'd be interesting to see how much they might have just cribbed off each other. I'm just saying it'd be interesting. I'm not saying that I'm sure Bakshi is not. So after Black Wolf is dead, Weehawk destroys the projector. The armies of darkness are defeated. The demons are banished back to their realm. The rest of them are routed by the elves. Happy ending. Very much kind of the end of World War II-esque, where the survivors basically are the victors are the survivors with all the scars and everything that goes with it. But there's the hope for the future and that everything turns out with some truly excellent narration, just bringing it all about. And eventually Eleanor and Avatar go off together while Weehawk goes to become the new ruler of the city of Montagar. And that is where we end this movie.
Yes.
So there were a number of very interesting style elements that Bakshi wove into this that really made it unique for me. Dave, what hit you the most?
A lot of the designs. I like this concept that this takes place in the future as well. I mean, usually when you think of fantasy films, wizards, elves, orcs, whatever, those are usually like centuries ago. Now, granted, we've lost technology since then, but the point is the technology that existed is a thing of the past. And you got like this post-apocalyptic fantasy world.
Not only a thing of the past, a thing of the forbidden past. They make a very important part through the first third of the movie that for the elves and the fairies, technology and all of the ancient knowledge is forbidden. And as a matter of fact, Black Wolf goes out of his way to go and kill anybody who believes in magic and would stand against technology.
Yeah, so
it's a little heavy-handed in the delivery that total reliance on technology is bad and leads to this, but it's a solid moral, certainly.
Right, and the imagery, that Ralph Bakshi's style of the art in this film is very, I think, unique. It looks very close to what he did with his Lord of the Rings animation, but I like the background designs for a lot of the stuff. I mean, it looks like apocalyptic in its nature. The character designs are pretty nice. I like how Peace looked. It's simple, like we said, red eyes, great. His other character, the president, I mean, it's just now we're kind of like treading on Mad Max territory with some of these designs too. You got the president wearing a clown mask. Insert your own joke here if you want, but the president's wearing a clown mask, and you know, it just very Mad Max-esque in a way. The wizards pretty much look like wizards.
Interestingly enough, I actually would kind of somewhat disagree with you. Avatar doesn't look very much like a wizard. He just looks like an old guy in a robe and a hat that covers his eyes most of the time, a nose that sticks out, bare feet. He has no trappings of magic about him except the star in his hat.
Teddy bear wizard. No, when I say when he looks like a wizard, I mean
Gandalf looks like a wizard. He's wearing proper robes. He's got a staff,
got the robes on, but in a way, I could identify him as a wizard. Black Wolf?
Black Wolf
definitely looks evil. I mean, he's got bone arms and stuff, and
as a mutant, he's got no flesh on his arms, just his hands. It's kind of gruesome, really.
Weehawk, he's okay looking, but I guess fits the character. He's pretty gruff and cranky and, you know, full of anger. Eleanor now. I mean, when you were talking about this movie a couple weeks ago, I had to look up this movie, and then Eleanor caught my attention because of the clothing costume factors, and it's like, is this for real?
She rocks the loincloth and the cloths that cover the essentials. But doesn't leave much to the imagination because she's, number one, a fairy, and number two, it kind of emphasizes that her character is innocent and playful, but at the same time, it makes that plot twist all the more harsh.
Yeah.
When she kills Peace, it's like, that doesn't seem like that could come from her.
Now, we also mentioned earlier, the character itself was nothing special, Sean, the fairy. I mean, He was in, he was out. Kind of like, his appearance in The Force Awakens. He was in, he was out. But he actually had more lines in Wizards than he did in The Force Awakens. But the fact that it's Mark Hamill doing the voice in this movie is just kind of like, out of a list of actors who are kind of like, I don't know these names. They've done stuff.
Sure.
But Mark Hamill was probably the one that stuck out the most because the fact that he's still doing voice work to today.
But an interesting thing, this movie beat Star Wars by how long? A couple of weeks?
Bakshi says 2 weeks.
A couple of weeks. So at that time, when he needed the voice, Hamill needed work. He was just another actor out there who needed a paycheck. So he came in for all of two lines, 2 sections of lines, and that's about it.
Who knows?
That's about
brief work.
Very brief. Probably didn't get paid a great deal for it.
Right.
And at the time, he wouldn't have had any name recognition because he hadn't been Luke Skywalker yet. And I'm not sure how much they knew that movie was going to take off. So, all things considered, it was, kind of a fortuitous thing that he was in this movie. And he plays it up, too. He's playing a fairy, and a cute little fairy at that.
Oh.
And he's just using his cute voice for it. But it's definitely Mark Hamill.
The one thing with Mark Hamill is never underestimate the power of his voice. I mean,
yeah.
People always assume that where'd this Mark Hamill guy go after Return of the Jedi? Clearly, he didn't do anything. And then you look at his resume of work versus Harrison Ford. Technically,
well, Harrison Ford spent a lot more time in front of a camera,
right?
But Hamill has done a lot, including series that were lots and lots of.
Not only did he
episodes.
do voice work, but Mark Hamill also did a lot of plays, like Broadway play type stuff. So it's not like the guy never did work. He was very active in the industry even before Star Wars came back. He still, it was active in the industry, and he managed to have a second comeback, really. But that's about all you can really say of Sean. It's like, well, Mark Hamill, big star, voiced him, great.
Yep, that's it.
I mean, otherwise the character is just there to be killed.
Yep.
Spoilers, but you know what? This movie's what?
1977, 40 years old.
Yeah. It's about as young as my beautiful wife, so the movie's been around. You can't really spoil anything, and Captain Marvel's up for a couple days now, a couple weeks by the time you get to it, and dang memes just spoil everything before you can even read a spoiler warning.
Yeah. Another thing that was interesting was the method that they chose to make some of this.
Yes.
Using stock footage, including all the Nazi propaganda was ripped right out of stock footage, and also their use of fantasy elements from other movies that they chose to rotoscope.
Yes.
Which is to draw over film and create this monochrome effect, but these really dramatic scenes of cavalry racing or hordes of armies that probably came out of some fantasy movie in the earlier 70s. But when you apply this technique over it, this looks like it got ripped right out of a rock concert or rock album cover.
Yeah.
Very, very stark and gothic and definitely delivered impact.
Yeah, it's a very unique way to do it. But he did what he did because he ran out of money, and it was cheaper to do that versus animate these. Technically, they would have been epic battles, really, for animation.
Sure,
it works. It tells the story.
It works, and he really does make the most of it.
Yeah.
It's not just, okay, this will do. I guess it's not stick figures. No, it's actually pretty stark, and
he wanted to finish his movie, and he finished his movie.
He did. A lot of people can't do that these days.
No. Yeah, it was, you appreciate the hard work that he did to accomplish what he wanted to accomplish.
Yep.
I've said this watching the movie, and after watching the movie, Netflix or somebody, well, I guess now that it's a Fox property and Disney now owns Fox, I mean, I think this world that was created, I think it could be due for a comeback. The designs, you just keep the designs pretty close to the same, but you have a few tweaks here and there. But I really like the costume designs that they have to these characters.
Well, as much as Hollywood doesn't have any new ideas, they might as well. I don't think I'd really want to see this one rebooted or redone.
Television series. I gotta be clear about that. Not a movie, but something in the television series where you can even follow the original for all like I care. Just as long as it's something in that world, and it's a pretty fascinating world. And given the post-apocalyptic thing to it, I think animated would be its best form.
Well, maybe. I think that you could probably draw more out of it if you're going to turn it into a TV series by reducing the montages that, progress time in the movie. That's an element that Bakshi likes to do. And instead, you have plot points and elements that are used in place of those montages. You can certainly get out more material that way and develop the world a bit more. I think one of the things that really sticks with me is that for all that there's wizards, and they're talking in the central part of it, this very easily could fit into the good versus evil theme of Star Wars, where you have the clearly good Jedi versus the clearly evil Sith with all of the iconography. The stormtroopers of Star Wars, as opposed to the uncompromising red jumpsuit clad armies of Black Wolf. Pretty good corollary between the two there. Likewise, the elves look like a ragtag bunch. They do lend a certain aesthetic from the British Army, including when you see them in defense against the mutant forces in the trenches, because they've learned trench warfare. Very much reminiscent of the British forces defending against the German invaders. But all in all, it's fairly easy to see some of the comparisons that were drawn from real life that inspired Bakshi. As much as he underplayed that in the special edition or special features that we saw, never really brought up a lot of his personal connection to World War II, which I thought there must have been something. Until you find out that he was actually born in Palestine in 1937, which, of course, contested territory back then until it was eventually given over to Israel, which undoubtedly had something to do with his fascination with World War II and inserting that into his movie. So, but here's Dave.
Whatever you said, I agree to.
Yay!
I don't know what you said.
That's okay. You don't need to.
I'll find out.
It's the best way to go. All right.
Yeah, there's... you were going to say something?
I was.
Right.
Another interesting thing, we touched on it a bit, but I thought it was kind of ironic, the swerve that we took with the ending of the movie. Expecting this big apocalyptic battle between two immensely powerful wizards. In Star Wars, for instance, when we see good versus evil, Luke versus Darth, we get a lightsaber duel. Mm-hmm. Considering the limitations of Darth Vader, it may not be as epic, but, he's pulling things and even though the dueling, we eventually find lightsaber dueling to be a lot more animated. In this one, you still had every bit of the sense of gravitas of this monolithic force of evil by the plucky guy from the light side fighting him. We are cheated completely out of that in Wizards. It's, I'm going to confront you, I'm going to insult you, and then I'm going to shoot you.
And that's what makes it amazing, really, because you're not expecting it.
Yeah, the plot twists in this are breathtaking how quickly they come because you don't get any warning. And that's something that they don't do in movies anymore. It's like, we're going to have a twist, but we're going to give you so many clues up to that twist.
Actually, we had a twist with The Last Jedi. It was something people weren't expecting, which is debatable. That's why the film got some of the backlash that it got.
Yeah.
It took people by surprise. You're like, whoa. Well, the way they were building that up, I was expecting a little more out of it, but okay, whatever. I'll go with it.
Yeah.
And then people hated it.
Yeah, some people did.
It's like,
not everybody, important to say.
No. But it goes back to, do fans really know what they want? And it kind of fits into that scenario, but...
Okay, as a mental exercise here, Dave, if you would change anything in this movie, what would you have done differently?
Well, I can't fault the guy for having a limited budget.
Sure.
I mean, he had what he had, and that's it. I mean, I can't really say anything based off of the budget. Maybe some of the music choices, but it fits into that era of the 70s. I mean, some of this disco sounding stuff. There are some great music cues throughout the movie.
Oh, yeah.
But then it was switched to like 70s disco for a few scenes here or there, or that style of music. And, I have no problems with the voice casting.
No,
everything.
I like the voices.
Some movies in that era that were animated, you can really tell that some of the actors just they're not giving it their all. But the people who were doing the voices in this movie, probably due to Baksh's directing, they sounded fantastic. I mean, they made their characters believable. From my perspective, that's what I was getting out of the movie.
Oh, I concur completely.
And there's just not a whole lot that I can think of. I mean, okay, maybe throw a little more clothes on the Eleanor, but
really, I would have said no. I wouldn't.
Part of that
going for full nudity,
is its unique, the movie's uniqueness there. I mean, as ridiculous as it sounds, that's what makes this movie stand out too, because it is part of the artwork there. And I can't think of anything really, because the limitations on the budget is the reason why he did some of the things that he did.
See, if I was going to do anything, I would probably have drawn out that final battle a little bit more. You could still have had the same twist, but I would have had Black Wolf manifesting the magic. I would have had him summoning up thunder clouds and getting ready to blast his brother.
That's a good one.
That might have been a nice, contrast there again, and really, making use of the set piece that you've got.
And that would have been a complete character reversal.
Exactly what I was going for. Right. Black Wolf is ready to take on his brother in the way that they fought when they first clashed, which from the pictures involved shape shifting and all kinds of high magic. And this one, I probably would have teased that. I would have had Black Wolf immediately going to show off how powerful he'd become, and then Avatar just taking him out. But they didn't do that, which is fine.
And that was the other fascinating thing about this movie was, I think some of those storyboard or like story page flashback scenes where it's just a picture and they're narrating over the picture.
Yes.
I think some of that probably too is budget limitations.
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt about that.
They couldn't animate that, but what they did instead was they drew out the picture to depict what was going on, narrate over it, and switch to another picture, narrate over that. You still get your story out of this. And that's what was important about this movie. The story was intriguing enough to keep you pulled in and appreciate the style and all that.
The other thing that was nice about this movie, too, very refreshing, is that you have a movie that clearly tells a story. There's no ambiguity.
Yeah.
There's no wondering at the meaning. It's pretty obvious what's going on. And it tells a story, punches it home. There are enough twists to keep it interesting. You can't predict how everything goes the first time you see it. You can't say, oh, this is where Eleanor is going to turn, clearly. You can't say this is where he's going to pull out a gun, because you never see him have a gun. Mm-hmm. It just bam, almost at random, although clearly it isn't.
Yeah.
But it doesn't falter in its story. It delivers the entirety of it all the way through without compromising itself, and doesn't leave you in the end. There's no what really happened here. It ties up everything. That's really refreshing to me. Because there's so many movies, when I get done watching it, I wondered, what really happened here? How did this go here? How did this happen here? That doesn't happen in this movie.
The dangers, too, nowadays, movies like to set up a sequel for a movie. Yes. And then in some cases, especially now, because almost everybody's trying to do it, guess what? The first movie that they planned to do is good. Therefore, now any ideas of a resolve and a sequel are now scrapped, because they're not going to do the sequel because, they planned it out. It's like the movie won't end, which unfortunately kind of happened to Bakshi when he did the Lord of the Rings movie.
Yeah.
He did same style as this film, The Wizards.
Yeah.
He filmed one half of his Lord of the Rings movie.
He had a lot more budget for that one.
And it didn't perform as good as they wanted, and then he never got the money to finish the second half that he wanted to do.
I think a lot of filmmakers could really stand to relearn the value of happily ever after.
Yeah.
Just end the story. Don't leave it hanging. I know they want to milk a cash cow until it's completely dried and flat.
You can still resolve the story that you presented in this movie and, leave it in a way to make a sequel. I mean, even Star Wars ended. Yeah, sure, Vader's TIE fighters spinning out of control. Mm-hmm. The story was still resolved.
It's still very clear that it was over at that point.
Right.
They could have just said from then on, if you had no other sequels after that, the heroes win, happily ever after, etc.
Yes.
Obviously they didn't, and it's a bigger and richer universe as a result, but they could have, and you still would have had a fine movie.
We do not have box office numbers for for Wizards, but according to Ralph Bakshi, the film comes out 2 weeks before Star Wars, he claims.
Yes.
And it did pretty good in the 2 weeks that it was out.
It did really well. He said it was like the number 2 movie in its time.
And doing good for a movie of its kind, too.
Yep.
Star Wars comes out, and theaters need to make money, too, so what ended up happening, and I think his words were, a lot of theaters back then only had like 3 screens. So they started booting out other movies to fill those 3 screens with Star Wars, which meant like Wizards kind of got kicked to the side.
A short run.
And Star Wars pretty much did what it did.
Yeah. So who knows what could have happened. But yeah, clearly it didn't make as much money as, say, Star Wars.
No.
But I don't know. The guy didn't look like he was homeless. I suspect he probably made his money back.
Yeah, the budget of the movie was $1.something million, which...
And what did he say? He, out of his own pocket, he paid $150,000 of it for effects?
Yeah, I mean,
something like that?
He did some stuff with his own money, I mean...
So I'm sure he got his money back and then a bit. The studio probably wasn't bemoaning making this movie. But, yeah, clearly... Well, Dave had never seen it. Dave's seen a lot of movies in his time. But this was one of those hidden gems that he'd never had an opportunity to. I had known about the movie, but I myself only saw it recently when I finally tracked down a copy of the DVD and we watched it together.
Yes.
So, you know, it's not in the public consciousness very much, which is why I was more than happy to bring Dave to see this. And now we're kind of bringing this out to, well, any of you who listen to this. One of those hidden gems that definitely is very watchable, and yeah, you might get something out of it.
Yeah, the one thing for sure is after the movie Cool World, which is like a Roger Rabbit-esque movie where you got the real world, and
came out at the same time, was also a real life film mixed with animation.
Ralph Bakshi did that movie too, which I actually want to take another look at this film sometime just because of that, like to see like the animation styles of the characters and have, now that I have this appreciation of his style and the team that he brought. I mean, technically it's not just him, but he brings a team with him that's been pretty much with him throughout most of his filmmaking career.
Yeah, when you go back and you watch what he does with a bigger budget, because obviously there was a lot of money in that. You had Brad Pitt, you had Cameron Diaz? No.
Kim Basinger.
That's it. Basinger. You had big names, and he also packed in the animation. The detailing that he had on some of the animation for that was just immense. Layers upon layers of animation all going at the same time, to a point where you almost couldn't comprehend it all unless you stop and watched it frame by frame to see all that was going on in some of those scenes. I think when you go back and look at that, Dave, you'll appreciate what he could do when he had the money to really show on a lavish amount of animation.
Another one that's caught my attention that he did is called Fire and Ice. You ever see that one?
I did not.
Yeah, I think this one may or may not be on Netflix, or I've seen this cover before. At the end of the Ice Age, an evil queen and her son are set on conquering the world using magic and warriors. Okay, I want to give this one a shot.
Well, we'll have to track it down and give this one a proper review treatment as well.
It's got like women wearing like, what he has women wear in his animated movies.
It seems to fit the theme.
And of course, we mentioned the Lord of the Rings that he did in 1978.
Yep.
Another one, I remember Nate telling me about this one, Fritz the Cat. That's before he did Wizards. 1972. It's unrated, but technically, I guess they rated it X back in the old days.
Oh my!
So I'm curious to see what this Fritz the Cat is all about, and it might also explain why he calls Wizards his children's fantasy film if Fritz the Cat was indeed rated X back in the old days.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's the backdrop to it. Dave, who was your favorite character in this movie?
Not Sean, not Weehawk. Avatar's okay, but nothing really spectacular. Eleanor, no.
You're running out of characters.
Black Wolf, maybe a little bit. I think
Black Wolf channeled a lot of what I imagine of Christopher Lee.
Mm-hmm.
very much that kind of villain. He was a Count Dooku / Saruman type villain.
Yes.
Iconic, really, in his way.
I think Peace, and some of that has to do with just the concept of this character. Did they say he was a robot or something?
He was called a robot,
but probably a robot in sense of being like programmed to kill, maybe.
He had an antenna, an aerial on his head, but as far as whether or not he was alive,
so Boba Fett.
Yeah,
but Peace and a lot
of
that
cyborg probably
go into like character design, the character traits. Just he starts off cold and ruthless, then he gets added onto the quest. Which I've played those role playing games of like Knights of the Old Republic for Star Wars, and
sure.
And that Mass Effect, and I do believe you always pick up a bad guy of some sorts who eventually, you depending how you play the game, you can get them to join you to be good, or if you go bad, they go bad with you because they're already there. But it's kind of a fun thing to do in those games, and that's kind of what that character reminded me of. Is a character ruthless, does his thing, gets caught, kind of has a change of heart, whether it be reprogrammed or whatever Avatar did to him. But, it serves his purpose in the story.
Mm-hmm. Also interesting is that he adds a little bit of immediacy of action to the rest of the group. Trouble comes, he pulls out his gun, and he fights it the way that he knows how, which the others don't always do. My favorite was Avatar. I kind of like the bumbling old wizard archetype. Also the fact that he clearly has this immense power, but he never really uses. A little bit like Gandalf in his way. You always think that Gandalf is really powerful, but he really doesn't do much with magic. It's mostly what he does in his words and his expressions. He also adds some nice humor to the story and kind of a worldliness to it that I think otherwise you're in danger of losing track of with all the elves and fairies and things. So I liked him as a character. Okay, we've spent a while talking about this movie. Now let's get down to the nitty-gritty, what everybody's waiting for. Dave, what would you rate this movie?
I could give this a 9.5. The story was that drawing to me. The designs were that appealing. I can't hold the guy back, like I mentioned, due to budgetary restraints, or the fact that he finished what he could finish and still tell a coherent story is really impressive. The voice works were great. My major hang-up was, again, some of the music choices, but again, it's kind of the era that it came out in. It had some great music cues, though, on top of some of the ones that were questionable in my mind. Just a unique style. It's still a unique style of filmmaking, even when you compare it to today's standards.
Okay, very good. I would rate it 8.5, which is still very good.
Yeah.
I would reduce it a little bit because I can hold a little bit lower quality against them. It is not as visually impressive as some contemporary to 1977 animations had been. I'm not, again, that doesn't ruin the movie. It's just, it's a little harsher on the eyes than it otherwise could have been. Some of the moralizing is a little heavy-handed. Again, doesn't really get in the way of the story, but it can take away some of your enjoyment of just sitting back and enjoying the ride with, oh gosh, he's bashing me in the face with this again.
Well, and that's where you mentioned too, contemporary. If they were to do this in the contemporary style, they might make references to contemporary problems versus the thing that they're really harping on in this movie was the Nazis and the technology, where by the time 77 came around, that's the past.
Yeah, people weren't talking about it quite as much. The other thing, too, there were some elements that I would have liked to have seen developed a little bit more, showing how Eleanor got taken off by the fairies rather than just vanishing. The final battle, drawing that out a little bit more. It's style differences and again, probably limitations by budget. I don't doubt that, but it does diminish the movie somewhat. It's still a very worthwhile movie. Mr. Bakshi is still a heck of a movie maker. This was a real treat to watch, and I'm glad we got a chance to do it.
Yep.
So that brings this episode to a close. We're very pleased with this movie, and we hope that you get a chance to see it yourself. If you have not, if you have, hopefully you enjoyed this little trip back in time with us. But as always, next week is coming, and will bring us back to another Back to the Podcast with Dave and Rob. Thanks again.